Suddenly, everybody's talking about critical race theory in the government indoctrination centers masquerading as schools. And this is critical, but not for the reason that you think. Stay tuned and I'll tell you more. So, unless you're living under a rock, you've probably heard people in recent weeks and recent months talking about the invasion of critical race theory into the public school system. Now, I'll start off by saying this is a big problem, but it's not the problem, right? It's not like the public schools were doing a great job and then suddenly critical race theory popped up and oh my goodness, now we have a problem. If we could just get rid of critical race theory, everything is going to be fine. I don't want anybody to walk away with that view because that is absolutely a false view. The government schools were brainwashing and destroying and dumbing down and harming your children long before critical race theory arrived on the scene. And they will do that even if somehow we manage to get critical race theory out of the school system. So keep all that in mind. But I do want to point out that this issue is of critical importance. It's much deeper than just racism. Right. It's not just that they're being racist against white people, which is what we're hearing so much, or against Asian people. Really, those are side issues. And this is the case so often with the agendas of the deep state and their communist tools, their communist dupes. And the Students for a Democratic Society, they had a slogan back in the 1960s. The issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. And that applies here just as much as it does on all these other things: global warming, feminism, acid rain, all these pseudo issues that they get us all concerned about. The issue is never the issue. The only thing that matters is how is this fake issue going to advance the revolution? And so right now they're teaching our children, and even if you work for the federal government now under Biden, they're promoting this. They're promoting it in the military. If you work for a big woke corporation, a lot of the Fortune 500, they're pushing this on you too. And what they're claiming is that basically, people of European heritage, including Europeans, by the way, are racist just by virtue of having been born. They don't have enough melanin in their skin content, and therefore they are racist. And therefore, every system, every institution that they have ever created is white supremacy, is structural racism. It needs to be dismantled. Now, obviously, that's ridiculous. That's absolutely insane. But the people at the highest levels promoting this don't believe that themselves, right? Again, the issue is not really the issue. They claim to be fighting systemic racism. They claim to be fighting against white privilege and all the rest of it. That's not the issue. In fact, the people who are pushing this the hardest are all white. Okay, it's not because they hate white people. They actually want people to start thinking of themselves in terms of their skin color, their race. And I should point out, as a Christian, I've looked in the Bible. I don't see God dividing people by race. He divides people by tribe, by nation, by tongue, and more importantly, by saved and unsaved. But he doesn't divide people by race. And so, as far as I'm concerned, this is an artificial distinction. I just use these terms because those are the terms that are being used in this discussion. But so they're saying that white people are racist inherently. They're born racist. They're born oppressors. And of course, critical race theory is a subset of critical theory, which holds that you need to analyze everything in terms of power and privilege and oppression versus oppressed. And so they've basically created these two broad categories: oppressor and oppressed. If you are of European heritage, and increasingly if you're a descendant of Asians, you are an oppressor. If you are what they call cisgender, which just means you're a man who realizes you're a man, or a woman who realizes you're a woman, then you have cisgender privilege, and that puts you in the oppressor category. If you're a heterosexual, if you're a man attracted to women or a woman attracted to men, then you have heteronormative privilege. Also, if you are a man, you have male privilege, and if you are a Christian, you have Christian privilege. So you basically categorized all of society into two broad categories. Now, I think the Bible offers some really critical insight into why the deep state is pushing this narrative. The reason is simple. If you go to the Bible teaches, in fact, Jesus himself teaches that a house divided against itself cannot stand. A kingdom divided against itself cannot stand. And so if they can create this division, this fault line, where you have half of society on each side, supposedly in the oppressor camp and supposedly in the oppressed camp, you're divided and you fall. That is ultimately the objective: to bring down the United States, to weaponize the population of the United States against itself. And to get people thinking in terms of absurdities. And if you're of European heritage, don't fall into the trap. Okay, don't. I identify with my white people. That's silly stuff. It's a trap. It's what they want you to do. They want you to start thinking in these terms. Don't let them win that way. Now, again, there's a real purpose to this, and we see the purpose when you look at the communist revolutions of the past. I've interviewed recently for the New American and for other publications a friend of mine, Lily Tang Williams, and you can find that video that we've put out recently. And what she explained is this is exactly the same thing that Chairman Mao did to children in communist China. They didn't use race because there was only one real race in China, the Han, the ethnic group, the Hans, and then some minority ethnicities. But that really wasn't an effective tool to divide China. So they created anyway two classes. You had the black classes and the red classes. The black classes were the landowners, the business people, the Christians, the counter-revolutionaries who didn't like communism, basically the oppressor class. And what happened was you were born an oppressor. So you were born into the black classes and you couldn't scrub your skin strong enough to get the black off. And so the children would have to go stand in front of their class and do self-criticism and confess their sins to Mao, that I'm sorry I was born into a black family and it's so terrible. I apologize for my collective guilt over this. Then the red classes were the revolutionary soldiers, the landless farmers and peasants and so on, the disciples of Chairman Mao, the poor and so on and so forth. So they divided China into two broad categories, and then they used this fault line to absolutely and utterly destroy society. And within some years, the blood started running. Tens of millions of people were exterminated in ruthless, barbarous fashion. Children would turn their parents into the Communist Party if their parents were from the black classes to try to assuage their guilt, folks. And this will be the end destination. We think we're America, so that can't happen here. Folks, if it happened in China, it happened in the Soviet Union. They used bourgeoisie and proletariat. It happened in Vietnam. It happened in Cambodia. It happened in Cuba. It happened in all these places. I think Americans are being very, very naive to think that it can't or won't happen here. If we continue on this path, it will happen here. Now, what does this look like? Well, we have reached seemingly peak insanity in the state of California. In the state of California, they just passed this new ethnic studies model curriculum where the children are literally led in chants to the demonic pagan deities of the dead Aztec Empire. True story, elementary school children. And one of the authors of this curriculum actually called for the help from these Aztec deities for help with a genocide against white Christians. And if you look at this curriculum, these children are told to chant Panche Bay, Panche Bay. This is part of the In Lak Ek affirmation. And they're directly appealing to these murderous demonic deities of the Aztec regime. They're supposed to ask them for critical consciousness and help becoming warriors for social justice. Okay, true story, guys. They're chanting to the Aztec gods Huitzilopochtli and also another one, I can't even pronounce the name, Tezcatlipoca. And so, I grew up in Mexico on a regular basis. I was just in Mexico City. We'd go over to Tenochtitlan, the ancient capital of the Aztec Empire. And growing up there, I remember this very well. You'd go there and the tour guide would teach, oh, yeah, one weekend they brought 80,000 people that they had conquered from another people group, and they brought them up to the top of this pyramid, and they had, dozens of priests working overtime to chop the hearts out of these people. They'd take a bite and kick the dead body down. And these were human sacrifices to these deities of cannibalism and human sacrifice and war. And so now children in California will be chanting to these deities. They will be asking for healing epistemologies and a revolutionary spirit. And this chant ends with this culmination, this climax, where the children ask these deities for help with liberation, transformation, and decolonization. If that's all insane to you, good. It is completely and utterly insane. Actually, it reminds me of the Old Testament, where God's people who once knew God started worshiping Moloch and Baal and sacrificing their children to these demons. Well, what happened? Well, it got real nasty. Go open up the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, for more insight into that. And this is just one of the most recent examples, right? Here's another one that just came out. This was from the Philadelphia public school system in Pennsylvania. This is a direct quote from an anti-racism declaration that they put out. They said, race is the social construction that set the foundation and built the infrastructure for the United States we know today. Racism is the root of all other forms of injustice and provides the nourishment needed for other systems of oppression to thrive. As such, in order to destroy the tree, we cannot simply pick at the leaves or chop away at the trunk. We must destroy the root. Okay, this is from coast to coast, right? California, Oregon, Washington, to New York, to Pennsylvania. It's even down in Florida, where the governor here said we were not going to do this. And I mean, it has gotten so out of control. You almost can't believe how bad this has gotten. in the public school system. They are, and by the way, guys, this is not new. It's been going on for a long time. But really, this is critical race theory. Some other examples that we have in North Carolina. Really, really bizarre thing. This was just recent. They had in Wake County, which is the largest school district in the state of North Carolina, they launched a campaign to eradicate whiteness in educational spaces. As part of that, the teachers were ordered to disrupt whiteness and override families. But this is not new. In 2017, in Rockingham County in North Carolina, parents found out that the teacher was forcing the children who were of European heritage to stand in front of the class and apologize for their white privilege. The Christian children were ordered to apologize for their Christian privilege. We've got Black Lives Matter indoctrination in government schools all across America. I want to show you a clip of a Black Lives Matter training session for teachers where they're teaching teachers how to be good Black Lives Matter teachers, and they're actually summoning ancestor spirits. Check this out.
Then I'm going to ask you to hold an ancestor in your head right now. Ancestors watching, I know they're watching. Ancestors watching, I know. Now call out your ancestors into the room, loud so we can hear you. Ella Baker. It only took us 5 minutes to shift the energy in this space together.
So that's Black Lives Matter training for teachers so that your children can help summon ancestor spirits into the classroom. Crazy, guys, right? Imagine if they were asking the kids to memorize the 10 Commandments or pray to God, right? There would be outrageous lawsuits and all the rest of it. Now, Black Lives Matter is in government schools all across the country peddling this critical race theory narrative. They had the Black Lives Matter Week of Action. This was all over the country, even in the most conservative school districts. This was there. In Virginia, we found out that teachers were actually working to infiltrate parent groups that were upset about this critical race theory. They were going to use hackers to hack into their communications. They were going to expose these people publicly for daring to speak out, guys. One of the wealthiest school districts in all of America, the Cupertino Union School District. This is in Silicon Valley, by the way. Average home price is over $2.5 million. Okay, these are not oppressed victims. The white population of the school, less than 10%. Okay, a tiny fraction, and yet they were teaching the kids all this critical race theory garbage and all the other critical theory. So I'm going to read you some quotes. These children were ordered to deconstruct their racial, gender, religious, family structure, and sexual identities. They were ordered to create, these are third grade kids, by the way, they were ordered to create an identity map, and they were supposed to rank themselves based on power and privilege that they get from the intersection of their various identities. And so here's an example from the text. A white cisgender man, remember cisgender means a guy who thinks he's a guy or a girl who thinks she's a girl. A white cisgender man who is able-bodied, heterosexual, considered handsome, and speaks English has more privilege than a black transgender woman. Okay, what do you do with that, right? So same exact thing, guys, that we have seen in all these totalitarian dictatorships, right? In the Soviet Union, they divided people based on class, the proletariat and the bourgeoisie. In Nazi Germany, National Socialism, they used the race mongering to divide people. So really what we're seeing here, folks, is Marxism. It's National Socialism, but the issue is never the issue. The issue is not really race. The issue is not really trying to stop racism or whatever. The issue is the revolution. Now, psychologically, this is horrendous for children. Actually, I interviewed the doctor of clinical psychology, Gary Thompson. I serve on a board with him. Wonderful, wonderful man. He's a black man. He said it is horrendous and utterly harmful psychology to tell people, especially young children and teens who do not believe that they are racist and may actively despise racism, that there's nothing they can do to stop themselves from being racist. He said that woke supremacy is just as psychologically destructive on people as white supremacy. Okay, guys, this is terrible, terrible pseudoscience. It has nothing to do with reality. It is a revolutionary tactic to divide and conquer the United States. Now, a lot of it's probably illegal. Right, under the Civil Rights Act, for example, the statute says that you can't discriminate on people based on their race, etc. And yet here we have an entire mode of thinking, a worldview that's being forced on children that requires them to discriminate based on race, right? Because if someone has white privilege, you got to discriminate against them. Now, this madness has even infiltrated the churches. Fortunately, a nuclear bomb was just dropped on these lies from the pit of hell by Vodi Baucham. One of my favorite pastors, an amazing man of God, happens to be black. He just released a book called Fault Lines that is on the way to me. It's in the mail. I'll give you an update once I get it. But from everything I've heard from him, everything I've read from him, he explains that this lie is just straight from the pit of hell, and it is evil, and it must be removed from the churches and certainly from our schools as well, guys. Now, the origins of this, again, this is not new. Goes back to the Frankfurt School. The Frankfurt School, for those who don't remember, this was actually set up by communists. The idea came out of meetings in Moscow, organized by some of the top communist leaders in the world. They set up the Institute for Social Research in Frankfurt at the Goethe University of Frankfurt in Germany. And eventually they had to run away from there. But these were all communists. I mean, this meeting that set this up, the Communist Internationale and Soviet dictator Vladimir Lenin's minion Karl Radek got this meeting together at the Marx Engels Institute in Moscow. They had the head of the Soviet secret police, Felix Dzerzhinsky. You had the Hungarian Bolshevik Commissar of Culture, Georgy Lukács. That was in the Bela Kun regime. His specialty was sexualizing the children and teaching them perversion at the youngest possible ages. You had a bigwig from the Communist Internationale, Willy Münzenberg, and they came up with this idea that, look, the class warfare might have worked in Russia because Russia was really, divided. You had the aristocracy, the wealthy, and then basically the proletariat, the peasants. And so they used that as the dividing line. Well, in Western Europe, in America, that really was not as feasible. Obviously, the poor in America live better than the middle class in Europe. They live better than the rich in other places. They've got multiple flat screen TVs. They've got iPhones in their pockets. They've got air conditioning. They've got big cars with fancy rims. And so telling them that they're too poor and that they're being oppressed, that wouldn't work very well. So they had to use the racial fault line. The Soviets actually figured this out about 100 years ago, and they started trying to exploit this division in America. And we have it from Soviet documents that this was in their strategy. Eventually, they had to flee from Nazi Germany over some disagreements on the specifics of the socialist utopia they wanted to build, and they came to America with help from John Dewey and with Rockefeller money, and they set up shop at Columbia University and Ivy League universities across America, and then this poison, this critical theory that they came up with, spread throughout the educational system in the United States, and now this really is the worldview of many of our teachers, unfortunately. And so, yes, states are taking action to get rid of critical race theory in the schools. We've got legislation introduced all over. We got my governor, Ron DeSantis, saying that we're going to ban critical race theory in the schools. In fact, he said there is no room in our classrooms for things like critical race theory. Teaching kids to hate their country and to hate each other is not worth 1 red cent of taxpayer money. I agree. But guess what, folks? It's still in the schools in Florida. It's in the schools everywhere, and it's not going anywhere. Also, at the same time that all these states are working to push it back in school districts, the Biden regime is now working to impose it in the classroom. The U.S. Department of Education, citing a Biden executive order that called for a whole of government approach to equity and dealing with alleged structural racism and so on, was cited as the authority for this new proposed regulation where they are going to prioritize federal funding for schools that are woke and that teach this white privilege nonsense, this critical race theory idiocy. It is unbelievable. You can read the executive order or the regulation for yourself. It's going to create American history and civics programs that will improve the quality of education. They're going to emphasize the vital role of diversity in our nation's democracy. You'd think in a civics program they might get our form of government right. It's a republic, hint, hint, hint. Ask the founding fathers. Ask the father of the Constitution, James Madison. He'll happily tell you in Federalist 10 and other places. They're also going to create under this regulation a national activities program that will promote new and existing evidence-based strategies to encourage innovative American history, civics, government, and geography instruction, learning strategies, and professional development activities and programs for teachers, principals, and other school leaders. The priority will be for, and I'm quoting here, projects that incorporate racially, ethnically, culturally, and linguistically diverse perspectives into teaching and learning. It cites systemic racism, and it goes on to cite the debunked New York Times 1619 project that portrays all of American history as racism, oppression, and slavery. You can go watch our video on that, the fake history that's in the schools. This is critical, guys, to this whole agenda. And It actually cites this lunatic Ibram X. Kendi, an anti-racist activist who actually says your baby is racist and needs to become anti-racist. And so if schools want all this federal money, they need to, and I'm quoting here, take into account systemic marginalization, biases, inequities, and discriminatory policy and practice in American history. Okay, lots of money opening up here, and they are going to brainwash your kids if they're not brainwashed already. Guys, this is very significant. This is a threat to our nation. It's a threat to our republic. It's a threat to our form of government. It's a threat to our liberties. It's a threat to our families, and it is simply evil. Yes, you have sinned, and you should repent of your sins, but your skin color is not sinful. The crime of somebody who might have allegedly looked like you 200 years ago, that's not your responsibility. You do not need to repent of something that you did not do. It's a lie from the pit of hell that you have collective guilt and that you need to repent for things that you have no control over. It's silly, it's absurd, and again, it's not about racism. The issue is never the issue. The issue is the revolution. They want to divide America. They want to collapse America. They want to have us warring with each other and thinking of ourselves in terms of groups. And really, it's fundamentally evil, in my opinion, to tell a child that they are wrong or evil or sinful because of their skin color, or that they are victims and they can never do anything to excel in life because of their skin color. That's horrible to teach a child that. That's child abuse. It's abusive, and it needs to stop. But we need to keep in mind, folks, it's part of the larger deep state agenda to destroy our country. It's not new. And even if and when we do get this out of the government brainwash camps, and we'll have to see if that's ever possible, but even if we were to get that out, that's not the end all and the be all of the problem. It's only scratching the surface. It's only the tip of the iceberg. So folks, don't let the deep state brainwash your kids. Don't let the deep state convince you to think of yourself as victim or oppressor, as racist or a victim of racism. Stop with the nonsense. Okay, we are created in the image of God. We are unique individuals. Each of us has our own sins to deal with, and we should deal with them. But the color of your skin is not one of those sins. Don't let the deep state win on this, guys. Don't let them trick you into hating your fellow Americans over the amount of melanin that they have in their skin. It's absurd, it's dumb, it's silly, and it's evil. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm Alex Newman. This is Behind the Deep State. Please share this out. The social media companies, the big tech companies want to silence anybody who tells the truth and exposes their lies, so we depend on you to get this information out. Go to thenewamerican.com. You'll find all our uncensored content. Come back for more. We do this show every week. Thank you guys for watching, and God bless you all.
You know, it's no surprise that Facebook and YouTube and all the titans and tyrants of Silicon Valley, are the big tech companies, are censoring our content. We might not even be on these platforms for too much longer with the way things are going, folks. That's why it's all the more important that you head over to thenewamerican.com. You can sign up for our daily, weekly, or even monthly headlines. They'll get emailed directly to you. Better yet, you can subscribe to the New American Magazine. You'll get these delivered right to your door, and they can't censor a printed magazine. So hey, get over to thenewamerican.com, sign up today, and stay informed in the fight for freedom.